Hello, and welcome to the African News Network. Today, we delve into the wave of protests sweeping across Africa. Nigeria has become the latest country to witness mass demonstrations following the deadly protests in Kenya against the Finance Bill 2024 and Uganda's anti-corruption rallies demanding the resignation of the Speaker of Parliament. What are the underlying causes of these protests and what do they signify for the respective region's political and economic landscape? Let's explore. In Nigeria, the ongoing End Bad Governance protests have reached their fifth day, with organizers calling for a 10-day nationwide demonstration demanding economic and political reforms. But what sparked these protests and what are the protesters' main demands? The protests, which began on Thursday, have seen thousands of Nigerians take to the streets in various states. The grievances include the reversal of the removal of petrol subsidies, a reduction in the salaries and allowances of public officials, and broader economic reforms. Unfortunately, these protests have not been without incident. In some areas like Kaduna, they have turned violent, prompting state governments to impose curfews. In Abuja, the police have used both tear gas and live bullets to disperse peaceful demonstrators. You may be wondering, what has been the government's response? The protests continued on Sunday, despite a televised address by President Bola Tinubu, who called for an end to the demonstrations without offering tangible concessions and promising dialogue.
Government will not stand idly by and allow a few with a clear political agenda to tear this nation apart. Under the circumstances, I hereby enjoin protesters and the organizers to suspend any further protest and create room for dialogue, which I have always acceded to at the slightest opportunity. Nigeria requires all hands on deck and need us all, regardless of age, party, tribe, religion, or other divides, to work together, reshaping our destiny as a nation. For those who have taken undue advantage of this situation to threaten any section of this country, be warned, the law will catch up with you.
This response has led many to question the government's commitment to addressing the underlying issues. The economic context is particularly dire, with Nigeria grappling with soaring inflation, which reached a 28-year high of 34.19% in June. Many businesses closed on Thursday and Friday, but as protests thinned over the weekend, some have reopened. How do these protests in Nigeria compare to the recent demonstrations in Kenya and Uganda? In Kenya, the rejection of the Finance Bill 2024 sparked widespread nationwide protests, resulting in dozens dead, over 300 injured, and a subsequent cabinet reshuffle. These protests highlighted the deep economic frustrations and the demand for more accountable governance. Meanwhile, in Uganda, protests against corruption and the demand for the resignation of the Speaker of Parliament underscore the populace's impatience with systemic corruption and a lack of transparency. In Nigeria, the protests have also highlighted economic hardship and governance issues, with at least 13 people reported dead in clashes with police since the protests began. The police put the death toll at 7, attributing some fatalities to accidents and an explosive device. President Tinubu's economic reforms since taking office last year, including the partial removal of petrol and electricity subsidies and the devaluation of the naira, have been defended as necessary steps to reverse years of economic mismanagement. However, these measures have also exacerbated the cost of living, fueling public discontent. The protests in Nigeria, like those in Kenya and Uganda, signal a growing trend of public dissatisfaction with economic policies and governance across Africa. If these movements continue to gain momentum, they could lead to significant political changes and reforms. However, the immediate concern is the potential for further violence and instability. President Tinubu's call for an end to violence and his openness to dialogue are seemingly positive steps, but the government's ability to address the protesters' demands will be crucial in determining the future trajectory of these demonstrations. As we continue to monitor these developments, the question remains: will these protests lead to meaningful change, or will they be met with further repression? Thank you for joining us today. We will keep you updated on this and other important stories as they unfold. I'm Cynthia Nivioandi, and you're watching the African News Network.